To talk about regarding global gender roles is FGM. Many of you may have heard of this or you might have discussed it in another class. For some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing of it. FGM is an acronym for female genital mutilation, and there are various forms of it, which I'll get to in a minute. But I just want to first start off by saying that it occurs throughout the world. So although there are definitely higher cases in certain parts of the world, such as in Africa, you can find it occurring everywhere, even in the United States. It can occur at any age, although generally speaking, there'll be children, but it can occur in teenage years or even in adulthood. And there are also many variations. And you're not going to need to know each of these specific variations, but I do want you to know that there are several types. And I'll just run through a few very quickly for those of you that are not familiar with it or have not heard of it before. The least invasive, if we can call it that, form is the removal of the clitoris. This is considered the first form. We then have another form that also removes the clitoris plus part of the surrounding labia. And then there's another more extreme form that includes removal of the clitoris, part of the surrounding labia, and then stitching together of the vaginal opening. Now you might ask what that form is the removal of the clitoris. This is considered the first form. We then have another form that also removes the clitoris plus part of the surrounding labia. And then there's another more extreme form that includes removal of the clitoris, part of the surrounding labia, and then stitching together of the vaginal opening. Now you might ask, why is this done? Well, again, this is tradition that has been passed down for generations and generations. And part of it is based on myth. Part of it is based on cultural aesthetics. Part of it is based on disempowerment of women. Some of the myths that are out there are if a woman does not have her clitoris removed, then she won't be loyal to her husband and she'll essentially turn into a nymphomaniac. Another myth is if a penis touches a clitoris, the man will become impotent. If a baby while being born touches the clitoris, the baby will be deformed. So there are all sorts of myths out there. These are just a few associated with why people think it needs to be done. Also, in many cases, it is just become the norm for that particular body part. I know we can't have a complete analogy if we were to look at male circumcision. I mean, this is not apples to apples, but in many cases, when male circumcision is performed, it is for culturally aesthetic reasons. Yes, there's going to be a certain percentage that will have this procedure done for religious reasons. Yes, there'll be another percentage that will get this done for health reasons, although that is highly debated. But there will be an even larger percentage of people that will have this procedure done on their child primarily for cultural reasons, because the parent had that procedure done. And it's nothing more complicated than that. So even women that have had horrific experiences with FGM may still decide to have their daughter go through the procedure because she wants her daughter to be desirable and marriage material. Because in some cases, not being married is a worse fate than death. So they want their child to be married and be a suitable spouse. This is not done in most cases in a sanitary environment. This is typically done in a very unsanitary environment, often done with scissors, shards of glass, razor blades, without anesthesia. So it's of course extremely painful. Can lead to all types of infection, excessive bleeding, shock, or even death. And there can be all types of future complications with this particular procedure. The question becomes then, should it be banned? And And this is a difficult question to answer. To begin with, it is banned in many places. But if we, as we just learned with dowry death, just because something is illegal or banned does not mean it's going to happen. So people can have a variety of views on this. And some feel that if it is part of culture, that it should not be banned. And if they want to ban it, that it has to come from that culture. Other people feel that it's wrong. It's just wrong across the board, regardless of culture, and that it should be banned. And this really comes down to someone's viewpoint regarding the world and cultural morality. And this is one topic where you can kind of look at the topic where you can use an example of what is good, what is bad. Can we label something good? Can we label something bad? Or is it all relative? So on the one extreme, you have the concept of what is called cultural relativism or cultural moral relativism, which basically says that nothing can really be good or bad, that it all has to be within the context of that culture. So if the culture considers it okay, then it's okay. So even though you may not personally agree with it, who are we to change someone else's culture and extend our particular viewpoint on another culture and make them change a cultural tradition? That's at one extreme. On the other extreme, you have people that believe in universal truths that will say there are some things that are innately good and innately bad. And regardless of whether or not it is part of culture, doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And that this is something that is an infliction upon human rights, and that it should be banned. Those are the two extremes. And then you have everything in between, where you have some people that will believe, well, perhaps if they were educated, perhaps if at least the myths were dispelled and it was done in a sanitary environment with anesthesia, then if they choose to continue the practice, then so be it. So then it becomes more of a voluntary practice. So they're not doing it based on myth, and they're not doing it in an unsafe manner, but they have full knowledge of what is reality versus myth, and they have full knowledge of the risks, and they're able to do it in a sanitary environment. Then if they choose to do it, then it's okay. Then it's almost likened to elective surgery in the United States, or elective plastic surgery in the United States. It would be something along those same lines. So some people can fall somewhere in between. So it is a very interesting topic because there are so many variations to it, and it is done so differently in different parts of the world. Like I said, in some cases it happens at birth. In some cases they might be teenagers. In some cases they might be an adult. And in some countries, they have banned it. In some countries, they have not banned it. And in some countries, they actually have movements of people getting together to try to educate people to the practice, at least to the dangers of the practice, or what could happen as a consequence later on. So I just want you to know what it is, know that it again is tied with gender role issues, and that it is at least to the dangers of the practice, or what could happen as a consequence later on. So I just want you to know what it is, know that it again is tied with gender role issues, and that it is, as of now, in most countries not done in a sanitary manner, and that there is this question of whether or not it should be banned. I won't ask you questions specifically on the different types. I just wanted you to be familiar with what it was in case you haven't heard of it, because it is so complicated and there are many variations to it that we don't have time to discuss. So this is going to be the last topic for global gender roles, and this is the last PowerPoint portion for exam number 1. So exam number 1 will include information on the introduction to human geography, the lecture on what is geography and the examples of what is geography, as well as the 5 themes of geography. It will include all of the PowerPoints on culture, what is culture, the different types of culture, like local culture, popular culture, mentafacts, sociofacts, um, local culture, folk culture, authenticity, commodification, and the exam will also include this PowerPoint on FGM, as well as the prior one on gender and identity and dowry deaths and female infanticide. And it will also have some questions on the film on social class in America, People Like Us. So if you have not yet viewed that, please make sure to do so. And also it'll include some questions on the readings that are on Blackboard. So any readings that I have on Blackboard are part of the exam. Typically, if you read them and you get the gist of what the article is about, you should be able to answer the question. Exam. Typically, if you read them and you get the gist of what the article is about, you should be able to answer the questions. But please make sure that you read those articles before the exam. Okay, we are all finished with this particular PowerPoint.